guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dropping Down from the Rafters podcast here on Tone New Entertainment. Once again, joining me tonight, co-host, it is Julie Cutler. How you doing, Julie?
I'm back, Tony. Thank you so much for having me, as always. I'm very excited to be here, especially because this is our first interview of 2025. I believe we did, was it 11 or 12 last year in 2024?
I think we hit 11, yeah.
11. So we made it through a really good chunk of talent, and I feel like I say this every single time we're on here, but I'm really, really excited about today's guest because we always have people on the show who are people that I genuinely think are extremely talented, extremely dedicated, and just people who are like really going places in career. Like these are the people that you're going to see on TV tomorrow. And so without further ado, I would love to introduce from Siesta Key, Florida, weighing in at 217 pounds, he is the 99 overall Myles Hawkins.
Wow, sounds like I'm right back in Rebel Spirit with that one.
That's right.
Thank you for the intro. Wow.
Thank you so much for joining us, Myles. Obviously, you and I have worked together many a time, which is part of the reason why I'm very excited to have you on the show today, because I've never really gotten the chance to interview you before, and I feel like there's a lot of questions that Tony and I have to dive into. The most basic probably being the age-old question that we ask pretty much all of our guests, which was sort of how you got into professional wrestling in the first place, if you were a fan at a young age, excuse me. What did that sort of evolution from fan to professional wrestler look like for you?
Oh, okay. So before I was a professional wrestler, Myles Hawkins was an NCAA All-American. So starting off my career, baseball was an 11-month sport. We played from January to November. So the only time that we'd really have off is December. So during my off season, I'm like, hey, I want to relax. I don't want to think about baseball. I've been doing this for the whole year. I want to do something else. That is right during the ramp up to the Royal Rumble. So every year we'd watch, and usually around the Baltimore area, the holiday tour, the 25th Christmas time till the New Year, they have a live show. So we would always get tickets to the live show. We'd go. And after my final year of baseball, it was the decision of, do I want to try Major League Baseball? Do I want to go try to walk on a team? Or do I want to just go be a pro wrestler? I'm like, that is so much fun. I've been watching it since I could barely even get in the arena. I'm going to go try that. And from there, signed up at the school, and here I am today.
So you're one of those overachievers where not only did you have the option to be professional at one sport, but you had the option to be professional at two sports.
Yes, I am. And I get laughed at a lot because I turned down the baseball, and everyone says, why would you do that to be a professional wrestler? And I thought that it was a better choice, and quite frankly, I like it a lot more.
I was going to say, what's that conversation like with your family? You know, because obviously, like, I think the American pastime is obviously baseball, right? But, like, when you look at, I mean, the scope of baseball, when I grew up, baseball was huge, right? Barry Bonds and Ken Griffey and all those guys. Like, we all idolize to be like them. But I'm like, I don't hear too many people talk about baseball anymore. I mean, maybe but a lot of people are talking about professional wrestling nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
But how's that conversation go with your family when you're like, not baseball, but I'm going to try professional wrestling instead?
Well, my dad is a huge baseball fan. Biggest baseball fan I think any of us have ever met. He got the opportunity to do the same thing, and he turned it down to go to college. So throughout that, he was saying, if you get the chance, give it a shot, give it a shot, give it a shot. Luckily, I have a little brother, and he's better than I am. So now all the major league scouts are coming to see him. I get to trickle off and go wrestle, and he's also a huge wrestling fan, my dad. So once I showed him a match, and I showed him, hey, I'm actually good at this. He bought in right away. He was like, I wanted to see you do baseball just because I think you were that good. But family-wise, he's like, you're having fun. You're crushing it right now. Keep going. Full support.
And so one other thing that stands out to me, and I always tell this to people that maybe haven't watched pro wrestling before, it's like the first time they come to a wrestling show, I always tell people it almost feels like a combination between being at like a traditional sporting event and some sort of theatrical event. Like one thing that wrestling has that baseball, basketball, hockey, all of these other sports don't have is that theatrical storytelling aspect, the concept of playing a character and being like this larger than life character outside of yourself. And so how did that piece of things sort of like play into that decision for you?
Oh, well, I started at a weird time because when I started, obviously the pandemic had just happened. So for the first year of my career, we didn't have a crowd. We're just doing this to a camera. So a lot of the little things came naturally because I had to, because the camera's so close. But the bigger things, such as presenting to the back row or making sure that everyone knows that I'm presenting to them, those are the things that are kind of catching up. And of course, going throughout the training center, when, for example, if I did something and somebody would get annoyed by it, okay, I'm going to take little bits of that and add it to the character. And through that, that's kind of just what developed it.
And I feel like that's a huge thing with being a professional wrestler. And I feel like Tony and I have talked about this with some other folks on the show. A lot of it is like feeding off of the crowd and sometimes taking little things that the crowd responds to that you're not necessarily planning for and sort of making that a part of your gimmick or a part of your character. And I think someone who is really phenomenal at doing that and has done that really successfully over the years is Chris Jericho. Constantly evolving his character. Is there anything that maybe happened during a show or like anything that you've done that the crowd has responded to a certain way that maybe you were surprised by or you kind of saw and latched on to?
I think one recently, actually at the Rebel Spirit Show, the last match, triple threat, me, Anthony Green, Dustin Flash Waller. Not the best result. We're not going to talk about that, but you know, it happens. I went for one of my signature dives, big backflip over the top rope. One of the things that I wasn't expecting was after I hit it, the crowd was still so much into that moment that looking back at it, we might have gone a little too fast. We should have let them kind of sit in that. Mm-hmm. So now going through that, it's okay. If I can make this dive the biggest moment, then everything else can slow down.
You mentioned about the crowd being into it, and I know just from me being in the seats, like I could tell when like the crowd is so into it that it feeds you guys and gals in the ring, right? Yeah. But you know, you said you started like during the pandemic when there was no crowd. Like, can you just explain a little bit of maybe the real challenges that you had playing off of no reactions at all?
So no reaction was kind of the baseline for me. So since I didn't have a reaction to go by, when there's no reaction, like, okay, I'm just going to go through my moves. And all the matches look kind of robotic because there's obviously no back and forth. But then we finished the storyline with debuting with the returning live crowd. The end of the story was a dog collar match. So my first match in front of a crowd was a dog collar match.
Oh, wow.
And the adrenaline rush of actually hearing the people in the background say, oh, I'm going so fast just because I'm excited personally. It's like I'm finally out in front of people. I think that show had about 600 to 700 people. And for that being the first one and hearing all of that energy, it's like I'm doing everything under the sun. I do not care. It is so much fun to me. Just that, I mean, the adrenaline rush, like now I'm starting to feel about it. It's, whew.
Yeah, Mosh Pit Messiah says that's a hell of a first match in front of a crowd.
You're not kidding.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Myles Hawkins versus Drolix at MCW Resurrection 2021.
Okay, so what goes through your mind when they're wrapping that dog collar around your neck? Because I'm thinking just any match or a hardcore match or anything, but like a dog collar, there's little room for error in those type of matches, I think.
Oh yeah. So Drolix is one of the trainers at MCW. So felt comfortable with that. But going into it, MCW, we like to do a little bit more old school where he's like, we're not going to call the first 7-8 minutes of the match. We might plan out little spots at the end, but for the most part, we're just going to talk about it in the ring, figure it out. So there's not really much to think about when the collar's going in your neck. Just hopefully I'm looking around and, oh, wow, there are people that far back. I didn't know that this building was that big.
Yeah. That being said, I know you mentioned the dog collar match, obviously. You mentioned the triple threat match that you've had just this past week with the alternative Anthony Green, a world-renowned professional wrestler, was formerly with WWE, is now with Pro Wrestling Noah, and Dustin Waller, who is another top prospect on the indies. Out of all of the matches that you've had so far, because you've had some pretty notable matches. We saw you on AEW Rampage not too long ago.
Blink and you'll miss it.
A tag team match with Leo Rush and Action Andretti. Out of all of these notable matches that you've had, are there any that stand out to you as, I guess, favorites, or matches that maybe you felt served as like major learning experiences, especially given the fact that you had started during the pandemic and a lot of these other matches, you know, were part of your transition into performing in front of a live audience?
I have a few matches that are my favorites for just different reasons. I think two that are my personal favorite. I did a squash match on AEW Dark long time ago. It was against FTR, just personal favorite tag team. So that was a stepping stone for me because it was my first time there. It was the first time I was getting to this bigger stage, but it was also I'm actually doing this and keeping up at the same level. This was one of the ones that it's like, you can do this. The other personal favorite of mine, I guess I'll split it. One was Leo Rush. That's another one that was just, hey, you've made it. Go. You're on the same level. The second one was in Maryland against Alex Divine.
Oh,
so
we saw him this past weekend as well.
Yes, you did. Yeah. So Alex Divine and I, we were telling a little story where as my character was evolving and I was becoming this maniacal character and I own the championship, I'm running this division, he was the only one who was taking me to the edge. He was the only one who was getting close. Every time we wrestled, either he would pin me and I would get my foot on the ropes or somebody else would interfere, but he would always be so close to beating me. The final match, which is one of my favorites, was the show was dedicated to one of our friends. I said, we're going to make this match the best match on the show, full passion, full out, and we ended up changing the title, so he actually finished by pinning me that night. So
wow.
I need to find a better favorite match where I actually win, but those are my three favorites.
Only pro wrestling can your favorite matches be where you end up on the losing side, I think, though, too.
Yes.
Like, you don't hear the Green Bay Packers saying, oh, man, when we lost the Super Bowl that year, that was our best game ever.
Yeah, no. Football is like, oh, yeah, my favorite game is the one that we lost. We blew it in the Super Bowl. Like, no, that's usually not how it goes.
Yeah.
No. Well, let me ask you, when you get that notification, whether it was a phone call or email from AEW to come and perform on a big stage, I mean, it's one of the biggest companies in the world right now. I mean, what's going through your mind? Are you calling people? Are you texting people? Are you telling your mom and dad, hey, I'm going on AEW? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So the first time I did it, I was like, hey, I'm gonna drive up to New Jersey and I'm gonna be at AEW. Oh, what time does it come on? When do we film it? How do we record it? It's like, I'm not gonna be wrestling on the main show.
Right.
But then once they announced the matches, I'll send a quick text to the close people and be like, I'm on. And then they won't hear from me for 6 hours. So it's definitely a rush. It's the first couple times like, wow, this is surreal. I can't believe this. All this stuff is happening so fast. And then after a while, it's okay. I kind of want to be here all the time. I want to get used to it. I think it was funny because the first time we went up, Action Andretti, now AEW superstar. We rode up at the same time. At one point, we were tagging on the dark matches. We didn't know that you could walk into catering. We didn't know that was a thing. So we go in, we grab our food, and we're like, the whole roster sitting here. We can go, take our food over here. We hear a voice way up here talking. Big Show walks up behind us and says, "You guys know that you can sit in there. You're allowed to be here." And just having something like that, just that little interaction was okay. So we're supposed to be here. Let's go a little farther. Let's act like we're supposed to be here. And then just over and over and over again. It's fun. It's a blast. Every time I get that email, it's feel good.
That being said, a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. Number one, I think the very first opportunity, or one of the first opportunities when I had seen you on AEW Dark, I know you had mentioned that you had started wrestling during the pandemic. So that first opportunity, that must have come up relatively early in your career. Because when was the first time that you were on Dark? Like, how long had you been wrestling at that point?
I think officially 6 months.
Yeah, so I mean, to get an opportunity like that early on in your career, like that must feel very, very validating that you're going down the right path to get noticed at that level that early on. And all of that being said, I know that you had mentioned the Big Show and having that little interaction with the Big Show. Were there any other agents backstage, or like anybody else who is a veteran backstage that maybe gave you some advice, or somebody that you interacted with that you felt was really helpful in your experience there?
At AEW, Dax, after that first match, that was such a rush, because again, with that match, they're also old school guys that are like, hey, we're going to call it in the ring. The only thing is one of you guys is going to take the finish. And the guy I was wrestling with, he's like, kid, you're taking the finish. So as a guy who was, during my breaks, watching these FTR matches or the Revival matches in NXT, be like, wow, this is incredible. For him to come and say, hey, man, like, you're really good. You've only been doing this how? Oh, man, do this. This little thing might have been off. It's like, first off, I'm actually talking to this guy. Second off, I get the opportunity to ask these questions and get this feedback from somebody who's not only where I want to be, but doing what I want to do, and somebody that I've looked up to. Like, yeah, that was one that definitely, sparked the fire.
I think that's really cool, because Dax is such an amazing wrestler. And I'm a old school type of guy too. I like the old the Midnight Express style. Like, that's the kind of the tag team wrestling I love to watch, and he's got that. And it's really cool, to soak in the knowledge of somebody who is at the top of their game, for the longest time, right? And I thought AEW Dark was such a great thing, because he was spotlighting so many great independent wrestlers that people would have maybe never got to know their name, because it's hard to, if you're in Florida, to find people in Jersey and Vegas and California. Right. Every time they went, it was this huge group of new people that were getting spotlighted on a national platform. Is that something that you're maybe kind of missing, or wish that was still around, was the platform of AEW Dark? Oh yeah, of course. Obviously, as a professional wrestler, I want to put my brand out as far as I can. And platforms like AEW Dark were one of those. Of course, starting out, when you have to do the ring crew stuff, I was fortunate that within my first 2 months of training, the Ring of Honor dojo was 20 minutes away from MCW. So they would say, hey, we need people to fill in. So during their pandemic tapings, I was the ring crew, because I was 10 minutes away from the arena. So those opportunities, I got to sit there and basically just study wrestling for 12 hours with some of the Ring of Honor's top guys. They'd come over, and of course there's no fans, so they'd sit next to us, and it's like, what do you see? Oh, how do I not do that? Now, of course, I'm 5 months in. I don't know the right questions. I'm asking, how do you do a headlock? I'm like, all right, kid, go clean up something. But being able to sit there and watch how they go through their process, that really helped early on.
And I think Tony, all fists, no flips.
Flips.
All right. Well, I do one flip a match. I do one flip a match. All right.
I was gonna say, when you had mentioned the backflip that you had done in the triple threat match this past weekend, in my brain I'm like, I just watched the footage of that earlier today. One thing that I was gonna say, just branching off of Tony's comment about AEW Dark, and I think now they kind of use sometimes Ring of Honor as a somewhat similar platform and maybe a smaller scale, where every here and there they'll bring in independent talent to use for those tapings. But the other great thing about it is not only does it give independent wrestlers the platform and the TV experience to sort of get that under their belt, but it's also good just from like a talent scouting perspective, because it's interesting if you think back, like you look back on how many people have been featured on AEW Dark that got a contract either with AEW. Action Andretti was a good example of somebody that you brought up, somebody that was noticed as being like a really standout performer, and even Chris Jericho took particular notice of him. But if you look at how many other people, Cora Jade was on AEW Dark at one point, Thea Hale, all of these other people that
Ren Sinclair was on a bunch of times too.
All of these people. There was like one whole class in NXT at one point where a good handful of the performers were all people that I had recalled seeing on AEW Dark. Cole Carter is another one. So it's just like a really cool platform for people, but it's also smart, I think, just from like a talent scouting perspective as well.
Oh yeah, like it can't be easy to watch all the independents across America, let alone outside of America.
We're trying. It's hard.
Yeah, we're trying our best.
But if somebody's watching this area, if somebody's watching, let's say, New England, if somebody's watching the Mid-Atlantic, somebody's watching the Carolinas, somebody's watching Georgia, somebody's watching the West Coast, somebody's watching the Mid-Atlantic, somebody's watching Texas, and they all say, oh, this guy, you need this guy on your show. And then a bigger platform like AEW goes, okay, this is what we're presenting. Now you see talent from all over. And once they start interacting, you'll get matches that I never thought I wanted to see.
Right.
I didn't know this guy was in California and is incredible. He would have never met somebody from the Mid-Atlantic. But now I see them together. It's like, I need to see this.
Exactly. And something else that I wanted to bring up while we're talking about facing opponents from different places, you have a very big match coming up next week.
Literally big.
Friday, January 24th, where you are going to be going one-on-one with former WWE superstar Donovan Dijak. How do you prepare for something like that, stepping toe-to-toe with someone that has that level of experience and notoriety? What are sort of your thoughts going into that match next week?
Well, I know Donovan Dijak has seen a lot of things, but I don't think he's seen anything quite the combination of Myles Hawkins yet.
Oh, okay. Tell us more.
A little bit of power, a little bit of speed, a lot of finesse, but definitely something that I know what Dijak has seen. We all have seen Dijak. Dijak might say that he has noticed me, but I don't think he really knows what he's in for.
Okay. Well, those of you watching, just a quick little plug right here.
Plug it.
If you are in the New England area, next Friday in East Brookfield, Massachusetts, the 99 overall is going to be going one-on-one with former WWE superstar. Feast your eyes on Donovan Dijak. This is at Timber Yard Brewing Company. Huge first time match. So we have two big main event guys going one-on-one for the first time. You are not going to want to miss it. That's with Rebel Spirit Pro Wrestling. You can buy your tickets linked on our Instagram page right now.
Even if you aren't in the New England area, make your way to Rebel Spirit Pro. These shows are insanely good.
It's worth the drive. Yeah.
It's so much fun. It's a totally different experience than I think people get at a lot of different shows, because we specialize primarily in performing at. We have a handful of breweries that we partner with. And so it's more than just a wrestling show. It's kind of like a whole experience, which I think is really unique and different from a lot of the other promotions that you see that are maybe performing out of like small arenas or gymnasiums, things of that nature. This just has like a whole different feel to it. So I have to echo what Myles is saying.
Yeah, I think the last 2 shows, there's been a live band, a live dinosaur.
We did have a live dinosaur.
A live dinosaur, like actual live
like
dinosaur.
Actual live dinosaur.
Okay.
We teleported him in.
What? Okay. Yeah. I mean, it has been pretty cold. He might have frozen from the ice age out there or something
I did not ask the dinosaur how his travel was from the prehistoric era, but next time I see the dinosaur, I will make sure to ask him for you.
Respect. Yeah, definitely want to respect some boundaries out there. Myles, we talked about, your family, but like I grew up as a wrestling fan, and as a kid, when I grew up, it wasn't cool to be a wrestling fan, like we were kind of picked on for wrestling being what we didn't know what it was, but everybody would tell us, and we would fight them tooth and nail that it wasn't what they were telling us. So as a kid growing up, watching wrestling or being a wrestling fan, to like maybe some of your friends that maybe you went to school with and now know what you're doing, like what are their kind of thought processes of your career path now?
So when I was young playing basketball, like 8th grade basketball, I wasn't good at basketball. I wasn't good at the sport of basketball. But if somebody had to dive for the ball, if somebody had to jump up and block a shot and really be over dramatic, I was the one who did. So once I, announced my first couple matches, and they're like, oh, you're doing that? That makes 100% sense. Like that is exactly what we thought you were going to be doing. Also, everyone that I thought was going to go like, that's weird, that's fake, that's everyone across the board has been, that is so cool. Whether it's people in baseball, whether it's people outside of baseball, whether it's people from the engineering department, they all go, I wish I could do that, but it makes sense why you do it.
It's kind of crazy, Myles. I'll share a quick story. Like as someone who just relocated to a brand new area 2 months ago, and I'm trying to meet a lot of people now. Like I do my spiel, like this is what I do. I'm a video producer. I produce videos, blah, 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 blah. Everybody's like, yeah, that's cool. And I'm like, yeah, I'm also in the professional wrestling business as well too. And it kind of catches their eye. They're like, well, tell us more about that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I do ring announcing. I'm doing highlight videos. I do backstage interviews, this and that. And now they, whenever I email and follow up on business emails, I'm like, I'm the wrestling video guy. They're like, hey, okay. It's something that definitely catches. I've seen it in 2 months now of kind of how I'm working this. And it's definitely an attention grabber. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. And normally I won't go out of my way to say it, but if somebody asks what you do, like, I'm a professional wrestler. Like, what? Yeah, right. Yeah. Professional wrestler, like WWE, AEW, exactly like that. And as soon as you say that, you can see the nostalgia kick in. You can see like, oh, this guy's like Stone Cold. This guy's like The Rock. What do you do? And of course, questions like, what's your name? What do you do? Where can I find you? Where can I see this? And most times they'll come back. If I see them again, they'll go, I didn't know that you two were the same person.
Yeah. I was gonna say I had some guy mention, like when I was telling somebody, they're like, oh, do you remember Jake the Snake Roberts? I'm like, I pulled up my phone, I'm like, here's my interviewing Jake the Snake Roberts. And they're like, oh my God. I'm like, okay, so it's not just me saying it, it's like you get to show them like the little proof that that's out there.
Yeah, that's always the best. We my little brother's school, they have a professional wrestling club for the middle schoolers. Ooh. And I was one of the guests. So I walked in and they were watching one of the matches. I surprised them with the title belt at the time. And all the kids were freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. The next week, my little brother had a basketball game. And I wanted to go see the basketball game. So I went in, not dressed up, just regular person. And one of the kids from the pro wrestling class was sitting in the front row as I was walking past, and his eyes bugged out and he was starstruck. His dad ended up sitting next to us, and his dad was talking about, oh man, it's really cool. Like the school has a pro wrestling club, and they had one of the wrestlers in there last week. And my dad, knowing that I was there last week, decides to mess with him. He goes, "Oh, really? What's his name? I like wrestling. I'll look him up." He goes, "Myles Hawkins. Like, I watched one of that guy's matches. He's incredible." Meanwhile, I'm sitting 2 people down from him.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sitting right there and hearing all this. He's like, "My son's a huge fan." I think we ended up giving him tickets to the next show, the whole club. So when he came and saw me, I asked him about the basketball game, and you could just see the light bulb go off. He's like, "I can't believe it's the same person."
That actually brings me to a kind of an interesting question. I don't know that I've really asked this to many people on the show, but when you're Myles Hawkins, like, what are some of the key differences between you, as you know, in your regular civilian life, and being the character Myles Hawkins? And then maybe what are some of the things that they have in common?
So the switch that usually happens before going through the curtain is I just let all the barriers down. Instead of overthinking what people are going to think, instead of overthinking, is this person going to care? It's like, no, I'm just going to say everything. I'm going to do everything. I'll turn different parts up, especially if I want to get a specific reaction. I'm like, all right, I know that people don't like this part. I'm going to turn this up. I'm going to be a little antagonistic. But most times it's just, no, this is, if I were to go, what would be the wildest thing I can do at this moment? Or what would be the thing I want to do the most in this moment, depending on what my intentions are in the ring? The character is a lot of my natural personality, just without restrictions, just all chains off, just everything full blast go.
Was there anybody that had to give you advice to like unleash that a little bit? I know like lots of people probably have definitely given me advice in my interviewing. They're like, if you think you're at 100, take it to 120 or so like that. Has anybody given you like key advice like that has helped you grow into like the performer you are today?
Oh yeah, a bunch of people, and they still do it now. I by no means am at the full peak of where I want to be. So after my matches, I'll go back and I ask the different coaches, guys who have worked for NXT, guys who have worked for Ring of Honor, guys who are just in the back, like, hey, what can I do more of? And so most of these people have seen me throughout training. So they'll go, you're 10 steps ahead of where we thought you would be, but keep doing this, keep doing this, keep doing this. I'll ask people outside of wrestling. I ask my dad, who isn't a wrestler, but thinks he's a wrestling fan. And he'll go, I don't want to see you do this. And I'm not going to stop until you do this. This one thing. Like, all right, cool. I got that one thing. No, you got to do this one thing. You haven't done it yet. I'm not going to stop on that. But I like the outside of wrestling perspective, because wrestlers, we get so locked into what moves you're going to do. We get so locked into this is the way it was done when Stone Cold did it. Somebody who isn't a wrestling fan goes, I may not know Stone Cold. I might only know The Undertaker, and that's just from memes. But I like the fact that this person does this. At one of the last shows, one of the last Maryland shows, one guy brought his girlfriend's family, and they had never seen wrestling before. They had no clue what it was. They said the 2 things that they remember were the first guy was massive, just a massive human being. And another guy did a whole bunch of flips. Now, that wasn't me. It ended up being Kalisto, but his job is to do all the flips. So.
And that being said, I always find it really interesting, like, whenever I do have friends or family members come to a show that maybe aren't in wrestling, or at least like they're not involved in the inner workings of like whatever we're doing at that particular promotion, right? So it's always interesting to hear, just from like a pure entertainment standpoint, or like from a pure character standpoint, what they find entertaining, or even without knowing all of the inner workings of how things go from a technical standpoint in the ring, like which matches they think are good, in comparison to others. And that being said, something that I wanted to circle back to really quickly, because I feel like we've mentioned a couple of big names throughout the interview, and we've mentioned kind of like the nostalgia that we grew up with. Were there any particular people that you watched growing up that you felt have been direct inspirations on your career? Or like, was there any moment when you were watching as a kid where you were like, I need to do that, or I want to be like this person?
So a few direct inspirations, and I kind of blatantly emulate them in the ring. Number one, my all-time favorite, the Macho Man Randy Savage. Still do the elbow drop. I had to tone down some of the direct Macho Man mannerisms, but definitely one of my favorites. Shelton Benjamin, huge inspiration as a young kid, and Kofi Mania.
Ooh.
From 2019. That was a big one. I was watching that one. I watched that that match on the bus back from a baseball weekend. So we were going through the mountains, and I remember just going out right as he hit the SOS.
You mentioned the Macho Man Randy Savage. I did have the privilege of meeting the Macho Man, before he passed away. He came to my job. He was promoting his rap album at the time. He was done with that. And he was so nice to all of us. And he was doing these segments in this half an hour entertainment show. And I could strangle the guy that, so Macho Man's talking to us. We take some pictures with him. And then the guy comes up to him and he goes, "Hey, Macho, where's Miss Elizabeth? How's Miss Elizabeth doing?" And he goes, "She's dead." I'm like, and then he walked off and left. And I was like, sometimes you have to know what to say and what not to say. And but Macho Man, definitely, God rest his soul, was such what amazing generational talent. That's for sure. And you could definitely see some of the influences in your style. That's for sure.
And another thing that I wanted to ask, and this is something that I usually ask all of the guests on our show, is there anyone either on the independent scene or even someone that works for a major company, anyone that you haven't had the opportunity to step toe-to-toe with yet, that maybe you'd like to use this time to call out?
Ooh, someone that I want to call out. I actually have two. Can I do two? Does that count?
Absolutely.
Of course. It's your platform.
Cool.
You're our guest, Myles. We're not going to tell you what not to do.
Well, Julie, my college best friend, I have to ask her for permission.
Oh, okay.
She asked she asked for one. I want to see if it's cool to give two.
Yeah.
We can have as many as you want. Take this as far as you want.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Awesome. So number one would be a first time, but this is also another guy that recently I've started to see more things and started to be like, yeah, I want to copy that. I want to emulate that. That's where I want to be. Former AEW World Champion Swerve Strickland, of course.
Ooh.
He's one of the guys I like the way that you move. I like the way that your character works. I like all this. One day we're going to do that. One day.
I see that being a barn burner.
That'd be fun. The second one is a rematch because I don't like how it ended.
Okay.
Bishop Khan.
Ooh.
Yes. Didn't end in my favor, unfortunately. But again, another one of the guys who, as I was coming up, hey, do this. Like, all right, cool. We did that. Now I need to beat you. I'm not going to stop until I beat you. I need that on my resume. So, those are my two.
So maybe we could do a little magic. Tony does his little editing magic after the fact, after we post these interviews. Maybe we could clip those little snippets. And
we can clip the part where I'm beating him.
Yeah.
Put that in there.
Yes.
Yes.
Everything else could be left up to the viewer's imagination.
Yes.
There,
of course.
Okay. Myles, I love to ask the question because I always say that the world of professional wrestling is a crazy, crazy world. And I throw out the term bizarro because bizarro just means like WTF, what the heck just happened? So whether it was a fan interaction or something like crazy that happened in the ring or training, is there a moment that you ever thought to yourself like, this could only happen here?
Yeah. I guess my debut match in the dog collar match. We started. I was not as well versed in the ring as I am now. So I'm used to just regular wrestling. So once the dog collar went on, I started getting beat up a little bit. And I said, you know what? Forget this. I'm leaving. So took the dog collar off and just started walking out. Throughout the interaction, I did not realize that once you go outside of the barricades, everything's fair game. So I got thrown into walls. I got thrown into a storage locker. I got thrown into a trash can. I had fans giving their chairs for me to get hit with. And at a certain point, I'm laying there after getting thrown through a trash can provided by a fan. Like, how is this not 700 against 1? That was one of the moments where it's like, what did I get myself into?
The odds were definitely not stacked in your favor then.
Definitely not. A few other ones, and I'll just kind of float these out there. The extra work appearances and kind of background characters. I've been in a few very surreal segments, to say the least. So if you can go find them, wearing a whole bunch of non-wrestling attire, doing a whole bunch of non-wrestling things, but they were so much fun at the time.
I like that. It's like, go look for those moments.
Little Easter eggs.
Yeah, little Easter eggs. Because it's going to come up one day. I think there was, what was it, the clip with the picture with MJF? When he was working security.
Yeah.
And Samoa Joe and like MJF is working security. And like nobody knew, well, I should say nobody, but a lot of people didn't know who MJF was at that point. And it's like that picture, it's one of those classic moments. So I think we're going to see some Myles Hawkins pictures like that, down the road.
Resurfacing on the internet someday.
Oh yeah, there are definitely some good ones. I think there's one that's definitely going to pop back up, but one of them I have a mask and I wore it for a long period. So there's a mask, there's some rhythmic clapping. If you can figure that one out, then
I'm going to be doing like some major internet investigation after this interview.
I was going to say, he's sprinkling clues. He's sprinkling clues out there.
They're all over.
Okay.
The other thing that I want to ask, and this is, again, a question that I ask a lot of people, but something that I'm always genuinely interested in. I know some people are very private about sharing their goals. Some people just kind of like to keep their goals to themselves and not sort of speak them out loud while they're working towards them. But that being said, are there any sort of goals for yourself creatively that you have for the imminent future that you do feel that you're able to share with us?
So, yeah, one of my goals is starting out naturally as an athlete. The athletic part of wrestling came easy. My goal coming up is I want to become such a good character that people forget I can wrestle. It gets to the point where we just want to see the character. We don't know if you can wrestle for 20 minutes. Like, yeah, obviously I can, but to have the character be that entertaining that by the point the 20-minute match comes, like, I didn't know he could do that. So that's definitely one of them. And I'm sure in this business, everybody has the same goal. If I want to get to the highest level, I want to perform on TV. Yes, absolutely, that's one of them. But doing it with the entertainment side rather than just strictly professional wrestling.
I love that so much, Myles, because like, again, I'm an old school head when it comes to professional wrestling. And I, again, as much as I love a good, Bret Hart technical match and Mr. Perfect match, they were entertainers as well too at the same time. And I want to be entertained in my wrestling matches. I just don't want, 7 minutes of guys just going out there throwing each other with headlocks. I want to take home something to remember. And you're definitely making those memories out there right now, Myles. So definitely props to you right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
One other question, actually. Again, I don't know if this is something that I have asked a lot of their guests on the show, but Tony, you just kind of made me think of this while we're talking about like character moments and we're talking about stories. Are there any sort of like favorite stories that you've either watched on TV or have been involved in?
Ooh, Either watched or been involved in. I think favorite one, obviously watching, was Kofi Mania.
Yes.
That build of the crowd naturally getting behind Kofi, it caused me to become a pro wrestler, so I obviously latched on. As far as being involved in, maybe the one with Alex. That was a fun one because I like that one. We kind of told the story in the background where we might not point it out to the very end, but for 6-8 months, I never beat him clean. Someone always had to help me. Even if I was a babyface, someone helped me beat him. So that was one of the fun ones.
I love stories like the Kofi Kingston one because stuff like that, like Tommy Dreamer and ECW, like these stories that just come so like through the fans. And you know, I'm not a huge fan of like saying let the fans dictate like as to like the pathway that wrestling should be going. But at some point when something is so strong like a Kofi Mania, I'm glad that they kind of like just let those moments happen. You know, it's such a great field moment. I wish it's hard to, I like to say I wish we had more, but that's what makes those moments so special is that they are at such a high level and such a high memory for a lot of us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, that was definitely one of the core ones when I was becoming a wrestler, deciding on, that's what I want to do. I want to have that core memory for the next generation or the generation after that.
And I think also you guys bring up a really good point where with the amount of fan support that Kofi had in that story, it makes it really feel real. And for me, growing up as a wrestling fan as well, I feel like those were always kind of the stories that resonated the most with me, were the ones that had some sort of tie into real life where it started to blur the lines between what is scripted for TV for our entertainment and what is reality. And I think that, you know, for me, another story that really did that, the Cody Rhodes finishing his story at WrestleMania over the course of these past couple of years and how all of that tied into everything that was going on with the bloodline. Myles, I don't know if this was one that you had watched as a fan, but I remember all of the drama between the love triangle of Edge, Lita, and Matt Hardy. That was one that really drew me in as a kid because at that point, like now we have so much access to people's personal lives on social media. But at that point, like I remember hearing kind of like little rumblings of what was going on in their real life on, you know, whatever dark corner of the internet produced that kind of information at the time. But then watching it play out on TV, you really felt that sense of like, how much of this is real? How much of this is like really getting under their skin?
Yeah.
And how much of this is sort of manufactured for our entertainment?
I feel like that's the magic too. Once it becomes, is this real? Am I seeing something between the actors, as you say, or is this all just for our entertainment? Do they actually hate each other in real life, or are they just entertaining me? Are they that good? I think that's where we get the magic of Now I Believe. Now it's no longer just fake wrestling. Now it's I'm here for this story.
Exactly. And I don't know, from your experience, Tony, I feel like you brought this up before when you introduce yourself as a professional wrestler. And there's a lot of people that it sounds like you've gotten really positive feedback from. But then there's always those few people that are kind of like, oh, well, isn't that fake? Or isn't that, you know, this or that? And then you kind of have to, you know, take a step back and say, okay.
Yeah.
Compose yourself. It's not fake.
Well, usually I'm a huge Marvel fan, so I throw Marvel right back at them.
Yes.
Like, well, there's not a guy named Spider-Man in New York, unfortunately. So if you can believe in Spider-Man, you can believe in Roman Reigns, or you can believe in Myles Hawkins. Same thing.
Exactly. I believe in Myles Hawkins. I don't know, Tony. I'm assuming that
100%. Yes, for sure. And I love that so much. like I got 2 points, but like I know Chris Van Vliet was interviewed one time and they asked him about wrestling and he threw the superhero thing back at them. And the guy was like trying to defend the superhero thing from what I can recall. And I was like, what? It's the same concept, I guess. And the other point I was going to make is I have people that tell me, well, isn't that they say fake? And I was like, please, for the love of God, please stop saying it's fake because it's not. Because I'm like, as somebody who gets a backstage look into what's going on as I'm working, I'm seeing the guys with ice on the arms and maybe a sling after and the black eyes and the walking out with the backache. And I'm like, you're disrespecting me and I'm not a pro wrestler. Please stop. Like, that's one that still boils my skin, but it's the stigma to it. It's been that way again since when I grew up. It was like, hey, you guys watch the fake stuff, and
of course,
And to add to that, if you've ever seen just like a standard wrestling practice, I know when I've had the opportunity to just like be around the guys and ladies at like a camp or at a seminar or something like that, it's actually really amazing to see how athletic you have to be just to perform some of the basics, like just to do a basic lip bump, for example. Like, you literally have to be able to flip yourself over from a standing position to land safely on your back in such a way where you're not going to actually injure yourself.
There's a reason they say don't do this at school, don't do this if you aren't trained, because it takes a lot of training. I think at the school where I started, the first 3 months is basically, can you land safely just by yourself?
Right.
The second 3 months is, can you slam someone else safely? After that, we're going to teach you how to actually wrestle. But that first 6 months is, can you do this safely?
Is that 6 months frustrating for you, Myles? Because I mean, again, I think a lot of people go to wrestling school and they're like, yeah, I'm going to do this and this to actually have to. I mean, we know why you have to do it, but it's kind of like, well, can I get to the next level, or do I have to go through these slams, or do you see the importance now of like what they put you through?
Definitely beneficial. My first 6 months was a little bit faster. Most of my class kind of dropped out.
Kia! Come on, Kia! Come on! He's causing trouble. Kia Venue in the house, causing trouble.
He's mad that I will not buy in to the pet peeves. That's what he's mad about.
Oh, okay. Well, he did ask us our pet peeves when we talked about pet peeves when we had him on the show.
I'm sure you did. Yes. I am sure you did.
We're still talking about that.
Well, we're going to stop talking about pet peeves.
Okay, we're done. This is Myles Hawkins' show here today.
While we're on the subject of calling people out, though, and challenging them to a match, if Ko Vandu wants to pop his nose into this interview, I feel like we might have to finish this in the ring.
No. No. I mean, we could maybe as a warm up for Dijak.
A warm up. Did you hear that? Oh,
do the rest with Dijak.
Oh wow! Okay. Well,
say about that.
you asked Myles to call some people out. He's calling some people out now. All right, I like it.
He has a new pet peeve, Myles Hawkins.
Oh, wait, he has he doesn't want a match. He said, "Let's do a wet t-shirt contest." I don't know what you guys.
I beat you even faster than that, but.
Oh. Okay, shots fired in all different directions that I never saw coming. That's for sure.
This interview is spicier.
Yeah, it is. Julie, I think it's time for us to start expanding our content.
Yes.
You know? We're gonna let people settle their griefs here before they do in the ring. I think that's a new way to approach some things here.
As they say, controversy creates cash.
Eric Bischoff, thank you so much. Easy E. Well, Myles, Julie, I don't know if you have anything else for Myles. I know we're reaching the 1 hour mark here.
So something that I always like to ask people at the end of the interview, obviously we mentioned your match coming up with Donovan Dijak next Friday, the 24th in East Brookfield, Massachusetts. I always like to ask people, what else do you have coming up? Where can the people see you next? And where can they find you on social media?
Ooh, okay. So the following night after January 24th at Rebel Spirit Pro, I'm going to MCW to face Moses.
Oh.
Moses is returning. I have a few other matches that are coming up. One of them is, let's just say, a very wanted man. So that one's very exciting. But that one's not for a few months, and I can't announce it yet. So
okay, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for that.
Yes.
On the socials.
Yes.
Okay, I know you. Oh, go ahead, Myles. Sorry.
Oh no, of course. Follow at the Myles Hawkins, MYLES HAWKINS with an H, Dijak. On everything: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Pick one. I'm on there. Watch my matches. They're awesome. They're incredible.
I can second that. And I also wanted to add really quickly, and I think that this was something that I mentioned on one of our previous podcasts, Tony, at some point, but at Rebel Spirit Pro, a couple of months ago, Myles, you were involved in sort of a 3-match saga, I suppose we can call it, with up-and-coming superstar who has been ID'd by the WWE, Brad Baylor. And I have to say, if you want to see like 2 young top guys who are on the top of their game right now in terms of like a technical wrestling match, those are 3 matches that you are going to want to go back and revisit, because I feel like that is some peak Myles Hawkins right there.
Those are 3 good ones. Those are 3 really good ones. Had a lot of fun with those.
And all of that being said, Tony, I wanted to thank you so much for having me back on the show as well. And I'm sure we will be back again very soon. We always have our wheels turning with new ideas. You can follow me on my Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me. It is at The Crown Jewels. Crown is with an E at the end. It's the old English spelling. That's just how we roll here.
I was going to say before, there was a comment from Mosh Pit Messiah that I want to get to real quick that I missed. He says, shout out to every brewery helping keep wrestling alive. That's for sure. Because I know you both mentioned the show at the brewery coming up. And I love myself a good brewery wrestling show. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely. It's a whole experience, a whole different experience, just the energy of the crowd. And it's also great for the businesses as well. It's great for everybody to work together to make something really special.
Yeah, those are the best.
For sure. Yeah. Now, speaking of breweries, this Friday, I'll be at Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling at the Tannery Row House in Beaufort, Georgia.
Ooh.
They've got beer, they've got food, they got all the good stuff and awesome wrestling. So I'll be there doing some interviews, so you never know what I'm gonna come back with next week when I go out there. I think there was a few more comments right here. Hold on. KO says no, he's gonna win the wet t-shirt contest. Cashman will be the judge.
Oh God. That'll be interesting.
A few months. He says that you forgot the date. It's just you got a lot on your plate. You got a lot on your plate, Myles.
No, I know the date. It's very memorable. I have it written down everywhere, but I can't announce it yet, Keo. That's what happens when you have big matches coming up. You gotta keep those under wraps. One day you'll figure out, big dog.
Well, he was discussing one of the matches that he was the agent for the match. He wants to FaceTime Julie, and Tannery Row House lit. Absolutely.
I'm on the internet, Dan.
Well, with that being said, I want to thank everybody who came in with your comments tonight. It was definitely lively. It was definitely a lot of fun. Myles Hawkins, definitely thank you for your time, and I'm glad we made this interview happen. And, of course, best of luck on your professional wrestling journey.
Of course. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. And Julie Cutler, once again, I know you're going to be ring announcing and doing more awesome stuff out there. So keep up the great work. And yes, Julie and I will have some future show announcements coming here very soon. And so for everybody watching here live and everybody watching on demand, again, thanks again for your time and watching this interview. And if you haven't already, guys, make sure you hit that red subscribe button so you can stay tuned in here to Tone In Entertainment for future videos.
Subscribe to the channel. Do it. Go now. Do it now.